Around 2 million college students just graduated this year, and they all have the same question. If people that had a job no longer have a job, how am I supposed to get a job? And the answer is practice. Professional baseball players didn't get where they are today by reading books about how to get better at baseball. They got better at baseball by practicing baseball. And the same exact thing applies to getting a job. We're going to break getting a job down into 2 phases. You can't get a job without interviewing for a job, and you can't get an interview without applying for a job. So we're going to break it into applying for a job and interviewing for a job. And the best part about these 2 phases is that they're transferable skills. If you're applying for Walmart, you're going to learn the same things if you're applying for a data scientist job. Getting a job really boils down to one thing. How do you convince people that have no clue who you are that you're more valuable than everyone else that applied? There are 3 things that you need to have prepared for every single application, regardless of what you're applying for. And those are the resume, cover letter, and references. 2 tips for the resume. First tip, tailor it to your industry. Every industry is going to be different. In fact, if you're a scientist, you don't even have a resume, you have a CV. So there are so many different structures of resumes depending on your industry. You have to know which structure to use. Now the content within that structure is going to be pretty much universal. Anyone that knows resumes can critique the content. So when you're bringing your resume or CV to people, understand and take their advice with a grain of salt. Tip 2, don't use a template. Be original. Even if you use a template, make sure that template doesn't look like everyone else. Alter that template to be yours. I've seen thousands of resumes and so many of them have looked like templates. If you look like the person next to you in the application process, what sets you apart from the crowd? Nothing. You can't get an interview if you don't look good on paper. And if you look like everyone else on paper, you're not getting an interview. 3 things with the cover letter. First is be original. Just like the resume, if you sound like everyone else, if it's a template, it doesn't mean anything to them. It's immediately flipping on to the next page. They've seen that template 1,000 times before, they know what's coming. Be original. Number 2 is have the correct tone. There's a very fine line between too professional and too laid back, and you have to find a nice middle ground. Sounding too professional goes back to being original. Too professional can kind of come off as being a template. They've seen the template before, they're going to flip on. Being too laid back tells them that you're not taking this seriously enough and that they're not going to consider you. Tip number 3, have the correct mentality. JFK once said, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And the same thing applies to the cover letter. They already know that this job is going to benefit you. You wouldn't have applied for it if it wouldn't have benefited you. They want to know what sets you apart from the person next to you. What can you bring to the company? And that isn't your education. There are so many people that have the same education as you going into a specific job. So don't think about the education. What sets you apart from the person that was sitting next to you in all of your classes? And the last thing that you need to have prepared for your application is your references. 3 things for references. Number 1, always ask your references. Don't just assume that they're going to give you a good reference. Asking your reference gives them an opportunity to say no. And they're more than likely going to say no if they're going to give you a bad reference. The whole point of having a collection of references is to have people that are going to go to bat for you, not people that are going to strike you out. Number 2, give them details about the jobs you're applying for. Not everyone does reference checks all the time, so you want to set your reference up for success so they can set you up for success. So give them details about the company, give them details about what the company is looking for. If they need details about you, send them different aspects for them to hit on. Tip number 3, who are your references? Well, first off, don't do family. Family automatically puts you in a bad light when you're applying for jobs. These should be professional contacts like professors, former employers, and you should have a good relationship with them. On to phase number 2, the interview. Be prepared for a phone interview, a video conference interview, and an in-person interview. And practice all 3 of those mediums because they're completely different. You're going to come across different in all 3 mediums. For example, me in phone interviews, I typically come across as monotone and uninterested, because I have a lower voice, I don't have a lot of inflection in my voice, and they can't see my physical body language. I talk a lot with my hands and my facial expressions, so if you can't see that, you think those two things about me. So you have to understand things like that and then course correct. Tip number 2 is know the core questions within your industry. For example, if you're going into a campus recreation interview, I know that we're going to give you a diversity question, a conflict resolution question, and a leadership question. If you're already prepared for 70% of the interview and you're only having to think on your feet for 30% of the interview, it makes that day so much easier. Tip number 3, give specific examples. If they give you a conflict resolution question and you give a specific example, you're going to say, this is how I handled it, this is the result of what happened, and this is what I would do differently for next time. If you tell them those 3 things in that one example, they automatically know that A, you have the experience they're asking for, B, you can self-assess what's going wrong and what's going well, and C, you can learn and grow and adapt what's happening in your past experience to the job they're interviewing you for. Last but not least, tip number 4 is give diverse examples. Don't give all of your specific examples from one experience. If you give the same example over and over and over, A, it's really boring, but B, it doesn't set you apart. They're going to perceive you as having limited experience. The key takeaway of this entire video that I really want you to start doing is actually apply for jobs. Don't just practice these skills. Go out and find jobs and apply to them. It doesn't even have to be jobs that you want or jobs in your industry. Practice selling yourself to people that you don't know through this structured process, and you're gonna get better at it. The better you get, the easier it will be to get a job. If you're not prepared to capitalize on the opportunities when they happen, you're not going to get those opportunities. So put in the legwork now to set yourself up for success to get that opportunity when it comes along. If you want me to critique any of the things that you're putting together for an application, feel free to send them to me. I'll put my email address in the description below. Honestly, there is so much more to interviewing that we didn't talk about, and I realized that we're gonna have to have a completely separate interviewing video. So look forward to that. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button so I know this is the type of content you're interested in. And if you want to join our community, hit that subscribe button. I'm putting out 2 to 3 videos every single week geared towards giving you the tools to succeed. Proud of you, love you, and I'll see you next time. Making these videos is kind of like interviewing. Bonus tip number 5, breathe. Obligation. We're gonna take that. Keep getting closer and closer to this camera as we get along.